Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the military station orbiting New Terra. The morning had started like any other day in the outer colonies. Coffee was brewing in the mess hall. His crew was running routine checks on the defense systems. Everything seemed normal until the communication officer called out. "Commander, we're getting something strange on all channels," Lieutenant Kate Brown said from her station. Her voice carried worry. "Every frequency is being taken over by an outside signal." Jake walked over to her console. The screens showed waves of data flooding their systems. This was not normal communication traffic. Someone was forcing their way into every human communication network across the galaxy. "Can you block it?" Jake asked. Kate shook her head. "No, sir. The signal is too strong. It's coming from multiple sources. Whoever is doing this has serious power behind them." On the main screen, static filled the display. Then an image came through. Jake felt his blood run cold. The image showed thousands of human women standing in a large metal chamber. They wore simple clothes and looked scared. Above them, alien creatures with blue skin and long arms stood on platforms. These were Zephyrians. Admiral Lisa Carter was in her office at Luna Base when her aide rushed in. "Admiral, you need to see this right now," the young officer said. His face was pale. Lisa followed him to the main communication center. Every screen in the room showed the same horrible scene. Thousands of human women packed into what looked like a giant prison. The women ranged from young adults to elderly grandmothers. Some held hands. Others cried quietly. A voice spoke in perfect English. The alien speaking had skin like blue metal and eyes that glowed yellow. This was Overlord Vexthara, leader of the Zephyrian forces in this sector. "Humans of Earth and all your little colonies," the alien said. His voice was cold and empty of feeling. "You have been watching our mercy for too long. You think you can resist our rule. You think you can fight back. Today you learn what happens to species that do not obey." Captain Ben Taylor was on patrol near the edge of human space when the broadcast reached his ship, the Defiance. His crew gathered around the main display as the alien continued speaking. "These females come from your colony world Haven's Rest," Vexthara said. 70,000 of your women. Mothers, daughters, wives, sisters. They represent every family on that world. Today they die. Not quickly, not with honor. They die slowly so you can watch, so you can learn." Ben's hands gripped the arms of his chair. Haven's Rest was a peaceful farming world. Families had lived there for generations, growing food for other human colonies. The women on the screen were not soldiers or rebels. They were farmers, teachers, doctors, and shopkeepers. The chamber where the women stood began to change. Walls moved inward. The space grew smaller. The women pressed together as fear took hold. Some called out for help. Others prayed. Many simply stood in silent terror. "This broadcast will continue for 12 hours, Vexthara announced. "Every human world will watch. Every human ship will receive this signal. You cannot turn it off. You cannot block it. You will watch as your weakness is revealed to the galaxy." Jake Morrison watched as the first group of women was separated from the others. They were pushed into a smaller chamber. The walls there had devices that glowed with blue energy. When the energy touched the women, they screamed. Then they were silent forever. The process continued. Group after group was taken away. The Zephyrians made sure the cameras captured everything. They wanted humans to see the fear in the women's eyes. They wanted people to hear the crying and the prayers. Admiral Carter tried to send rescue ships, but Haven's Rest was too far away. Even her fastest vessels would take weeks to reach the colony world. The Zephyrians had planned this carefully. They knew humans would want to help, but could not arrive in time. Hours passed. The number of women grew smaller. Families across human space watched their loved ones disappear. Ben Taylor saw his neighbor from his home colony. She had taught at the local school. Now she was gone. The aliens showed no mercy. Young women who had just started their lives. Older women who had raised children and grandchildren. All were treated the same. All met the same fate. Your species thinks love makes you strong, Vexthara said during one of his speeches between the killings. Your bonds to family, your care for the weak, these things make you vulnerable. Today proves this truth. Jake noticed something during the broadcast. The other alien species that served the Zephyrians looked uncomfortable. Some turned away from the screens. Even they seemed disturbed by what was happening. But the Zephyrians continued. They had made their choice. They believed fear would break human spirit. They thought watching their women die would make humans surrender without a fight out as the 12th hour approached. Only a few hundred women remained alive. They had watched thousands of their friends and family members die. They knew their own end was coming, but something strange happened. Instead of breaking down, many of the remaining women stood straighter. They held hands and began to sing an old human song about hope. Vexthara looked annoyed. Even now they resist reality. He said, "This is why your species must be destroyed completely. You cannot learn proper fear." The last group of women was taken away. The chamber fell silent. 70,000 human women were dead. The broadcast ended with Vexthara's final message. "This is your future if you continue to resist," the alien leader said. "Submit now, and some of you may live as our servants. Continue to fight, and we will eliminate every human world. Every man, woman, and child. The choice is yours." The screens went dark. Across human space, millions of people sat in stunned silence. They had watched their own species suffer and die for 12 straight hours. The aliens expected broken spirits and quick surrender. They would soon learn how wrong they were about humans. Jake Morrison stood up from his command chair. His crew looked to him for orders. He could see the rage building in their eyes. It was the same rage he felt growing in his own heart. "Send a message to all human military units," he said quietly. "Tell them to prepare for war." The hours after the broadcast ended were the strangest in human history. Across every human world, people gathered in their homes, their workplaces, their schools. They had all watched the same terrible thing happen. 70,000 women had died while they could only watch. But there was no crying in the streets, no riots or protests, no angry speeches on the news. Instead, there was something far more dangerous. There was silence. President Helen Rodriguez sat in her office in New Washington. Her advisors expected her to call an emergency meeting. They thought she would declare war immediately. Instead, she picked up her secure phone and made a single call. "Pete, it's Helen," she said to Colonel Pete Williams, head of the Human Defense Corps. "You know what you need to do." "Yes, Madam President," Pete replied. His voice was calm, but she could hear the steel behind it. "We've been waiting for this moment." Pete Williams had spent his entire career preparing for war. He understood that sometimes the greatest strength came from patience. The Zephyrians expected humans to react with emotion. They wanted panic and hasty attacks that could be easily defeated. Instead, Pete began making quiet calls to military commanders across human space. Each conversation was brief. Each message was the same. Remember Haven's Rest. Prepare for Operation Vengeance. Admiral Lisa Carter received her call while standing in the memorial garden at Luna Base. She had come there to think about the women who had died. The garden was peaceful, but her thoughts were not. "Lisa, are you ready?" Pete asked when she answered. "I've been ready since the broadcast started," she replied. "My fleets can be mobilized in 48 hours. "Good. But we wait. We prepare. We do this, right?" Captain Ben Taylor got his message while still on patrol near human space. His crew expected him to turn the ship around and head for Zephyrian territory immediately. Instead, he ordered them to continue their patrol route. "Sir, shouldn't we be heading to fight?" his young weapons officer asked. Ben looked at the young man. "We will fight, but first we prepare. A smart hunter doesn't chase his prey. He sets a trap and waits for the right moment." The crew didn't understand yet, but they would soon. Dr. Amy Patterson ran the largest human military research facility. She had spent years developing new weapons and defensive systems. The day after the broadcast, she received a message that changed everything. "Dr. Patterson, you now have unlimited funding and resources," the message read. "Build us the tools. We need to win this war. Time is not important. Results are everything." Amy had been working on theoretical weapons for years. Designs that were too expensive or too dangerous to build. Now she had permission to build them all. She smiled for the first time since watching the broadcast. In the Zephyrian Empire, Overlord Vexthara waited for the human response, his intelligence. Officers monitored human communications, looking for signs of panic or military mobilization. "What are the humans doing?" he asked his chief spy. "Nothing unusual, my lord," the spy reported. "Their military units are conducting normal operations. Their leaders have made no public statements. It appears they are in shock." Vexthara was pleased. "Excellent. The demonstration worked perfectly. Their spirit is broken. Soon they will send surrender messages." But there were no surrender messages. There were no angry declarations of war. Either. There was just silence from human space. The Zephyrians found this confusing, but not concerning. Steve Nelson had been a cargo ship captain before the war. His ship carried supplies between human colonies. It was peaceful work that he enjoyed. His wife Karen had been a teacher on Haven's Rest. Steve had watched his wife die during the broadcast. He saw her face in the crowd of women. He watched the light leave her eyes when the blue energy touched her. But he did not scream or cry or break things. Instead, he went to the military recruitment office the next morning. He volunteered his ship and his crew for military service. When they asked him why, he gave a simple answer: "Because someone needs to pay for what happened." Across human space, millions of people made the same choice. Farmers left their fields to join the army. Teachers closed their schools to work in weapons factories. Doctors volunteered for military medical units, but they did it quietly. No parades or big ceremonies. No speeches about honor and glory. They simply reported for duty and got to work. Colonel Williams watched the recruitment numbers with amazement. In 2 weeks, human military forces had doubled in size. In a month, they had tripled, all without any official call for volunteers. "They're not joining because we asked them to," he told Admiral Carter during a secure meeting. "They're joining because they need to. The Zephyrians think we're weak because we care about our families," Lisa replied. "They're about to learn that caring about family is what makes us strong." Dr. Patterson worked around the clock with her team. They took apart every piece of Zephyrian technology they had captured over the years. They studied how their shields worked. They learned how their weapons functioned. They found weaknesses. "Their technology is advanced," she told Pete Williams during one of their meetings, "but it's not perfect. They rely too heavily on their shields. If we can overwhelm them quickly enough, we can break through." "How long do you need?" Pete asked. 6 months for the first prototypes. A year for full production. You have whatever time you need. We only get one chance at this." Captain Morrison began training his crew for deep space combat. They practiced boarding actions, and ship-to-ship fighting. They learned how to disable Zephyrian vessels without destroying them completely. "Why not just blow them up?" one of his officers asked. "Because we're going to need their ships," Jake replied. "And we're going to need prisoners who can tell us about their defenses." As the months passed, human space transformed. Peaceful farming worlds built weapons factories. Research stations developed new military technologies. Trading ships were converted into warships, but it all happened quietly. The Zephyrians, monitoring human activities, saw increased industrial production, but assumed it was for rebuilding after their demonstration of power. Susan Gray led a team of special operations, soldiers who had trained for missions behind enemy lines. Before the broadcast, her team had been used for rescue operations and intelligence gathering. Now they had a different purpose. "We're going to map every Zephyrian base, every fleet position, every weakness," she told her team. "When the time comes, our people will know exactly where to strike." Her teams began slipping into Zephyrian space. They moved carefully and quietly, gathering information and sending it back to human military planners. The Zephyrians noticed some of these activities, but dismissed them as desperate attempts at espionage. They never imagined the scale of what humans were planning. Tony Martin commanded the human fleet, protecting the core worlds. His job had always been defensive. Now he began planning something very different. "Every ship captain in human space is getting the same training," he told his staff. "Offensive operations, deep strikes, how to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems." "Sir, that's going to take enormous resources," his logistics officer pointed out. "We have enormous resources," Tony replied. "Every human world is contributing. Every shipbuilder is working for us. Every scientist is developing new weapons. The Zephyrians gave us a reason to unite like never before." 1 year after the broadcast, human space was ready for war. But the Zephyrians still had no idea what was coming. They saw the industrial activity, but assumed it was normal recovery from their demonstration. They were about to learn that humans could be patient when necessary. But when the time came for action, they would strike like lightning. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when someone killed 70,000 human women and thought there would be no consequences. 6 months had passed since the day that changed everything. The Zephyrians believed they had broken human spirit with their terrible broadcast. They saw increased activity in human space, but thought it was just normal recovery work. They were completely wrong. General Rick Davis stood in the largest military command center ever built by humans. The facility was hidden deep underground on a moon that officially did not exist. Around him, thousands of officers coordinated the biggest military operation in human history. "Status report," Rick said to his aide. "All fleet groups are in position." "Sir," the young officer replied, "we have 800 capital ships ready for the first wave. 2,000 smaller vessels for support operations. Every ship has been equipped with the new weapon systems." Rick nodded. 800 capital ships was more firepower than humans had ever assembled before. But it was just the beginning. In hidden shipyards across human space, more vessels were being completed every day. The Zephyrians had made a critical mistake. They had spread their forces across their entire empire, assuming humans posed no real threat. Their intelligence reports showed normal human military activity. They had no idea that every human shipyard was working day and night to build warships. Lieutenant Commander Susan Gray crouched behind a pile of rocks on the Zephyrian world of Kappa 7. Her team had been watching the enemy naval base for 3 weeks, learning their patrol patterns and defensive systems. "The shield generators are in the North Complex," she whispered into her communication device. 12 units guarded by automated systems. "If we can take those out, their orbital platforms will be vulnerable." Her mission was one of dozens happening across Zephyrian space. Human Special Forces teams had infiltrated enemy territory months ago. They moved carefully, gathering intelligence and preparing for the day when the war would begin. The Zephyrians never noticed them. Their security was designed to stop large invasions, not small teams of humans who could hide and wait for months if necessary. Back on Haven's Rest, Mayor John Parker stood in what had once been the main square of his town. The Zephyrians had left the colony after their demonstration, believing the survivors would be too broken to cause trouble. They were wrong about that, too. The weapons are hidden in the old mine shafts, John told his council. Food and medical supplies are stored in the cave systems. When our people come to liberate us, we'll be ready to fight alongside them. The survivors of Haven's Rest had spent months preparing. They had built hidden communication networks and weapons caches. They had mapped every Zephyrian position on their world. Most importantly, they had not given up hope that Dr. Patricia Adams stood in her laboratory looking at the latest test results. For months, her team had been developing what they called Retribution-class weapons. These were kinetic bombardment systems designed specifically to destroy Zephyrian shields. The test was successful, she told Colonel Williams during their secure video call. The new weapons can penetrate their shields with a 97% success rate. We're ready for mass production. How many can you build? Pete asked. As many as you need. Every industrial facility in human space is working on this project. We can outfit your entire fleet within 2 months. The weapons were elegant in their simplicity. Instead of trying to match Zephyrian energy technology, humans had chosen a different approach. The kinetic weapons used pure momentum and mass to overwhelm enemy defenses. It was a very human solution to an alien problem. Admiral Tony Martin walked through the massive fleet staging area near Pluto. Ships filled the space as far as he could see. Destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and carriers. Many had been built specifically for this operation. Others were converted civilian vessels now armed for war. The crews are ready, sir, Captain Helen Rooks reported. She commanded one of the new assault carriers. Morale is extremely high. Everyone wants to be part of this operation. Tony understood why. Every person in the fleet had watched the broadcast. Many had lost friends or family members on Haven's Rest. They had waited patiently while their leaders prepared for war. Now they were ready to fight. The fleet included ships from every human world. Earth had contributed its most advanced vessels. The outer colonies had sent everything they could spare. Even civilian shipping companies had volunteered their ships for conversion to military use. In the Zephyrian capital, Overlord Vexthara met with his military commanders. They were discussing plans to expand their empire into new sectors. Human resistance was no longer considered a serious concern. The demonstration on Haven's Rest was very effective, reported Admiral Kestar, the Zephyrian naval commander. Human military activity has actually decreased in recent months. They appear to have accepted their new status. Excellent, Vexthara replied. Begin preparations for the next phase. We will establish control over the remaining human worlds within the year. The Zephyrian leaders had completely misread the situation. They saw decreased human patrol activity and assumed it meant surrender. In reality, humans had pulled back their visible forces to prepare for the coming offensive. Captain Steve Nelson finished the final weapons check on his converted cargo ship. The vessel had been transformed from a peaceful freighter into a heavily armed escort. Like thousands of others, Steve had volunteered his ship for military service. All systems ready, Captain, his new weapons officer reported. The young woman had been a mining engineer before joining Steve's crew. Now she was trained to operate military-grade weapons systems. Good, Steve replied. Remember, when the time Commies, we don't stop until every Zephyrian base is destroyed. We don't stop until they pay for what they did to our people." The crew nodded. They all understood the mission. This was not just about defeating an enemy. This was about justice for 70,000 innocent women who had died while the Galaxy Watch. Commander Jake Morrison reviewed the latest intelligence reports from Zephyrian space. Susan Gray's teams had done excellent work. They knew the location of every major enemy fleet. They understood Zephyrian defensive tactics. Most importantly, they had identified weaknesses. "The enemy has grown careless," Jake told his senior officers. "They've been ruling through fear for so long that they've forgotten how to fight a real war. When we hit them, they won't be ready." The intelligence showed that Zephyrian forces were scattered across hundreds of worlds. They had small garrisons everywhere, but large concentrations nowhere. It was perfect for the kind of rapid strike operation. Humans were planning. Dr. Amy Patterson put the finishing touches on her latest creation. The device looked simple, but it represented months of careful engineering. It was designed to disrupt Zephyrian communication networks, leaving their forces unable to coordinate their response to human attacks. "When we activate these," she explained, "to Admiral Carter, their entire command structure will be blind for at least 6 hours. Their ships won't be able to talk to each other or to their bases." 6 hours should be more than enough," Lisa replied. "Our people can do a lot of damage." In 6 hours, the Zephyrians had always relied on their advanced communication technology to coordinate their forces across vast distances. They never expected humans to find a way to turn that advantage against them. As the final preparations were completed, a strange calm settled over human space. After months of intense activity, everything was ready. The fleets were in position. The weapons were loaded. The intelligence was gathered. Captain Ben Taylor stood on the bridge of his ship, now part of Admiral Carter's strike force. His crew was ready for battle. His weapons were charged. His ship was positioned at the edge of Zephyrian space, waiting for the signal to attack. "Sir, we're receiving the final briefing," his communication officer reported. "Operation Vengeance begins in 72 hours. Ben nodded. 72 hours. After almost a year of preparation, they would finally strike back. The Zephyrians had killed 70,000 human women, believing it would break human spirit. They were about to learn that it had only made humans stronger. In 3 days, the largest military operation in human history would begin. The Zephyrians expected to rule through fear. Instead, they would discover what happened when they made an entire species angry. The storm was about to break, and humanity was the lightning. At exactly 0800 hours, Galactic Standard Time, Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship and spoke into the communication system. Her words were broadcast to every human ship in the largest fleet ever assembled. For the 70,000, for Haven's Rest, for humanity. Across the galaxy, 800 human warships moved forward into Zephyrian space. The war had begun. The first target was Kepler Station, the massive Zephyrian naval base where the terrible broadcast had originated 1 year ago. Commander Jake Morrison led the assault force, his ships moving in perfect formation through the darkness of space. The Zephyrians at Kepler Station had no warning. Their sensors showed empty space one moment and human warships the next. The attack began with Dr. Adams' communication jammers, cutting off all Zephyrian contact with the rest of their empire. "All ships, begin bombardment," Jake ordered. "Remember, we want that station intact. We need their records." The new kinetic weapons worked exactly as designed. Zephyrian shields, built to stop energy weapons, crumbled under the impact of solid projectiles moving at incredible speeds. The station's defenses fell within minutes. Across Zephyrian space, similar attacks were happening at dozens of locations. Human strike forces hit supply depots, communication centers, and fleet bases. The Zephyrians had never faced a coordinated assault of this scale. Commander Kelly Brooks piloted her squadron through the outer defenses of the Zephyrian home system. Her fighters moved like deadly dancers, targeting communication relays and sensor stations. Each successful hit left the enemy more blind and confused. "Brooks, to all fighters," she called over her radio. "Remember, we're not here to destroy everything. We're here to take control. Hit their military targets and spare civilian areas." It was an important distinction. The Zephyrians had targeted innocent women and children. Humans would not make the same mistake. This was about justice, not revenge. The Zephyrian homeworld, Overlord Vextara watched his empire's defenses crumble in real time. Reports flooded in from across his territory. Human fleets were everywhere, striking with precision and overwhelming force. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his military commanders. "Our intelligence showed no sign of major human military activity." Admiral Kestar, the Zephyrian naval commander, could only shake his head in confusion. "My lord, they appear to have assembled these fleets in complete secrecy. Our monitoring systems detected nothing unusual." The truth was that humans had learned from watching Zephyrian tactics for years. They understood how alien monitoring worked and had found ways to hide their preparations. While the Zephyrians had been focused on ruling through fear, humans had been learning how to fight smart. Captain Steve Nelson led his converted cargo ship into battle alongside Admiral Martin's main fleet. His crew of former civilians operated their weapons with deadly efficiency. The mining engineer who served as his weapons officer had destroyed 3 Zephyrian patrol ships already. "Target the command cruiser," Steve ordered. "Take out their ability to coordinate their defense." The Zephyrian command ship tried to maneuver away from the human attack, but it was too late. Human ships surrounded it from all directions. Dr. Patterson's new weapons punched through its shields like they were made of paper. Within hours, the Zephyrian fleet defending their home system was in full retreat. Ships that had ruled the galaxy through terror now fled before human warships. Some tried to surrender, but their communication jammers prevented them from sending surrender signals. On Haven's Rest, Mayor John Parker heard the sound of explosions overhead. The liberation of his world had begun. He activated the hidden communication network he had spent months building. "All resistance cells, this is Parker," he broadcast. "Operation Vengeance has begun. Begin Phase 2 immediately." Across the colony, world hidden weapons caches were opened. Survivors of the massacre emerged from hiding places carrying military equipment. They had waited a year for this moment. The Zephyrian garrison on Haven's Rest found themselves under attack from all directions. They had grown lazy during their occupation, never expecting the broken colonists to fight back. They were wrong. Lieutenant Commander Susan Gray led her Special Forces team in an assault on the Zephyrian Command Center. Her people had spent weeks mapping the facility and learning the guard routines. They moved through the complex like ghosts, taking control of key systems. "Communications are down," her technical specialist reported. "They can't call for help or coordinate their response." "Good," Susan replied. "Now let's finish this." The Zephyrian officers in the command center never knew what hit them. One moment they were monitoring routine patrol reports. The next they were prisoners of war. The entire facility was captured without a single human casualty. Back in space, Admiral Carter coordinated the largest naval engagement in galactic history. Her ships moved with precision, born of months of training and years of careful planning. Every captain knew exactly what to do and when to do it. "Status report," she called to her fleet commanders. "Kepler Station is secure," Jake Morrison reported. "We have captured their command staff and downloaded their databases." Home system defenses are falling back, Tony Martin added. Enemy fleet is in full retreat. Haven's Rest liberation is ahead of schedule, came the report from the ground forces. Resistance fighters have joined the operation. Colony will be fully secure within hours. Lisa smiled grimly. After a year of careful preparation, the operation was working exactly as planned. The Zephyrians had believed their own propaganda about human weakness. They were learning the truth now. On the Zephyrian homeworld, panic was setting in. Government officials who had watched the execution of human women with satisfaction now faced the reality of human vengeance. Some tried to flee the planet. Others barricaded themselves in bunkers. Overlord Vexthara activated the Emergency Council. We must contact the humans immediately, he told his advisors. Offer them whatever they want. Territory, resources, prisoners. Anything to stop this attack. My lord, our communication systems are jammed, his communications minister reported. We cannot reach them. Then send ships with surrender messages, Vexthara ordered. Do whatever it takes to make contact. But the human fleets had strict orders. No Zephyrian ship was allowed to leave their territory. Any vessel that tried to escape was disabled and boarded. The aliens who had ruled through fear now found themselves trapped by their own actions. Captain Ben Taylor led the assault on the orbital defense platforms around the Zephyrian capital. His crew worked with deadly efficiency, their weapons tearing through enemy shields and armor. The platforms that had protected the homeworld for centuries fell one by one. This is for Karen, Ben whispered as his ship destroyed the last platform. His wife had died in the broadcast, but her memory drove him forward. Every shot he fired was for her and the other 70,000 women who had been murdered. Dr. Patricia Adams watched the battle reports from her laboratory. Her weapons were performing beyond expectations. Zephyrian technology, so advanced and feared for centuries, was proving vulnerable to human innovation and determination. The kinetic bombardment systems are exceeding all projections, she reported. To Colonel Williams, Zephyrian shields are completely ineffective against them. Excellent work, Doctor, Pete replied. Your weapons are winning this war. As the day continued, more Zephyrian positions fell to human attacks. Supply lines were cut. Communication networks remained jammed. Fleet bases surrendered or were destroyed. The empire that had seemed so powerful was crumbling in hours. Galaxy watched in amazement as human forces swept through Zephyrian space. Other alien species that had been forced to serve the empire began to see hope for the first time in centuries. If humans could defeat the Zephyrians, perhaps freedom was possible. By the end of the first day, the Zephyrian Empire was in full collapse. Their military was scattered and defeated. Their government was trapped on their homeworld with no way to communicate with the outside galaxy. Their leaders, who had believed they could break human spirit with a single demonstration, now faced the reality of human determination. The war was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Humanity had learned that sometimes the best response to terror was overwhelming force applied with careful precision. The Zephyrians had wanted to teach humans about fear. Instead, they had learned about justice. The siege of the Zephyrian homeworld lasted 3 days. Human forces surrounded the planet completely, cutting off all escape routes and communication. The aliens who had once ruled the Galactic Empire now found themselves trapped on their own world. Colonel Pete Williams commanded the ground assault from his command ship in orbit. Below him, human Marines landed at strategic points around the planet's major cities. Their orders were clear: capture military targets and government officials while protecting civilian populations. Remember, we are not here for revenge, Pete told his ground commanders. We are here for justice. Treat prisoners according to military law. Protect non-combatants. We are better than they are. The human forces moved with precision through Zephyrian cities. Unlike the aliens who had targeted innocent women and children, the humans focused only on military and government facilities. Civilian areas were left untouched. Captain Tony Martin coordinated the orbital bombardment of military installations. His ships used their new kinetic weapons to destroy Zephyrian defense systems while carefully avoiding residential areas. It was a demonstration of human precision and restraint. "Target the military command center," Tony ordered. "One shot, surgical strike. Make sure the government bunker remains intact. We need those officials alive for trial." The shot was perfect. The Zephyrian military headquarters collapsed in seconds, but the underground government bunker where Overlord Vexthara was hiding remained undamaged. Human engineers had calculated exactly how much force was needed to accomplish both goals. On Haven's Rest, Mayor John Parker stood in the ruins of the execution chambers where 70,000 women had died. Human demolition experts had placed charges throughout the facility, preparing to destroy it completely. "This place will never be used to hurt anyone again," John announced to the gathered survivors. "But before we destroy it, we will record everything. The galaxy will remember what happened here." The survivors had mixed feelings as they watched the chambers being documented and then demolished. The place represented the worst day in their colony's history, but its destruction also meant they could finally begin to heal. Human engineers immediately began work on a memorial. Every name of the 70,000 women would be carved into black granite. The memorial would stand forever as a reminder of what happened when innocent people were targeted for political purposes. Lieutenant Commander Susan Gray led the Special Forces team that captured the Zephyrian government bunker. Her people had spent weeks studying the facility's layout and security systems. When the time came to strike, they moved like professionals. "Overlord Vexthara, you are under arrest for crimes against humanity," Susan announced as her team surrounded the alien leader. "You will be given a fair trial according to human military law." Vexthara looked around at the human soldiers. For the first time in his life, the powerful alien leader felt genuine fear. "You cannot do this," he protested. "I am the ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. I demand diplomatic immunity." "Your empire no longer exists," Susan replied calmly. "Your military is defeated. Your government is captured. You are now a prisoner of war, and you will be treated according to the rules we follow, not the ones you chose to ignore." The trial of Overlord Vexthara was broadcast across the galaxy. Unlike the execution of human women, this broadcast was about justice, not terror. The alien leader was given legal representation and allowed to present his defense. Captain Steve Nelson represented the families of the executed women during the trial. His wife Karen had been among those murdered, but he spoke with calm dignity rather than anger. 70,000 innocent women died because this being wanted to demonstrate power, Steve told the military tribunal. They were teachers, farmers, doctors, mothers, and daughters. They were killed not for anything they had done, but for what they represented. This was not war. This was murder. The evidence against Vexthara was overwhelming. The Zephyrians had recorded everything themselves, believing their demonstration would break human spirit. Now their own recordings were used as evidence of their crimes. The trial lasted 2 weeks. When it ended, the verdict was unanimous: guilty of crimes against humanity. The sentence was life imprisonment, not execution. Humans would not lower themselves to the level of those they had defeated. Across the former Zephyrian Empire, other trials were taking place. Military officers who had participated in atrocities faced justice. But the trials were fair and followed proper legal procedures. Humans were determined to show the galaxy a better way of handling justice. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of her flagship as the last Zephyrian fleet surrendered. The war was over. It had lasted less than 6 months from start to finish. The empire that had ruled through fear for centuries was completely defeated. All Zephyrian forces have surrendered or been neutralized, her communications officer reported. The galaxy is officially free of their control. Lisa felt a sense of satisfaction, but not celebration. Too many people had died for this to be a happy moment. The war had been necessary, but war was never something to celebrate. The collapse of the Zephyrian Empire created opportunities for other species that had been forced to serve as slaves or subjects. Human diplomats worked quickly to establish new governments, based on freedom and democracy rather than fear and oppression. Dr. Amy Patterson led the effort to share human technology with these newly free species. Knowledge should be used to help people, not control them, she explained to a gathering of alien scientists. We will teach you what we know so you can defend yourselves. Admiral Tony Martin established the Haven's Rest Accords, a set of galactic laws that prohibited the targeting of civilians during warfare. The accords were signed by every free species in the galaxy and backed by human military power. Never again will innocent people be murdered to make political points, Tony announced at the signing ceremony. This is our promise to the galaxy. Commander Jake Morrison was appointed as the first director of the Galactic Justice Council, an organization dedicated to preventing future atrocities. The council had investigators, prosecutors, and military forces drawn from multiple species. We exist to protect the innocent, Jake explained to his staff. We will watch for signs of oppression and act quickly to stop it before it spreads. 1 year after the end of the war, President Helen Rodriguez stood before the memorial on Haven's Rest. The black granite wall contains 70,000 names, each one representing a life lost to alien cruelty. These women died because someone wanted to break our spirit, she said to the gathered crowd. Instead, their sacrifice united our species and freed the galaxy from tyranny. We will never forget them, and we will never allow this to happen again. Memorial's inscription was simple but powerful. 70,000 lives lost, one species united, never again. Captain Ben Taylor, now an admiral, commanded the new Galactic Defense Force. Human ships patrolled space lanes, protecting trade and preventing conflicts from escalating into wars. The same military that had defeated the Zephyrians now worked to maintain peace. We learned that sometimes you have to fight to protect what matters, he told his officers. But we also learned that the best victory is preventing the fight from starting. The galaxy had learned important lessons from the war. Fear was not an effective way to rule. Oppression always created resistance. And humanity, while patient and peaceful by nature, was capable of terrible vengeance when pushed too far. Other species studying human behavior noted that humans were unique in their response to atrocity. Most species either collapsed under such pressure or responded with equal cruelty. Humans had done neither. They had united, planned carefully, and struck with overwhelming force while maintaining their moral principles. Dr. Patricia Adams continued her research, but now she focused on defensive technologies rather than weapons. We build these systems hoping we never have to use them, she explained to her students. But if someone tries to hurt innocent people again, we will be ready. The lesson was clear across the galaxy. There were lines that should never be crossed. And humanity was the species that enforced those boundaries. They preferred peace and cooperation, but they would respond to atrocity with swift and certain justice. The Zephyrian Empire was gone, its leaders imprisoned or dead, its military scattered. But the galaxy was a better place because of what had happened. Freedom and justice had replaced fear and oppression doubt, and in the memorial garden on Haven's Rest, 70,000 names served as a permanent reminder that some prices are too high to pay, and some crimes demand a response that shakes the foundations of space itself, Humanity had proven that love and caring were not weaknesses to be exploited. They were sources of strength that could move mountains and topple empires when directed with intelligence and determination. The galaxy would never forget the lesson of awe. Haven's Rest. Never underestimate a species that fights for its family.